What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Fantasy Flex Podcast. This is the Week 7 night shift episode. We'll break down the Sunday Night Football DFS slate and the Monday Night Football DFS slate. I'm your host, Chris Raybon from the Action Network, and here to break down the slates with me, one of the most accurate fantasy rankers, projectors in the game, the odds maker, Sean Kerner. Sean, how you feeling?
What's up? I'm feeling pretty good. Definitely excited to talk about this epic Sunday Night Football matchup. How you doing?
I'm doing good, man. I'm hyped for this matchup too. This Dolphins Eagles game, and then we're going to a Lakers Suns game next week, so that should be fun as well.
Can't wait to get out of the house. It's been weeks, so
I know,
I'm ready
man.
for it.
Hey, I mean, if you're coming out the house to seeing the first LeBron versus KD matchup since 2018 is a good way to come back. But let's get right into it. Before we do, just remember we have our Discord now. So if you want to chat with Kerner, myself, the other action experts, just be sure to check the link in the episode description. Sean's been very active in there. I give you a lot of props. They love you up in there. You've been really good about staying active and engaged in there. So yeah, we might jump in there during some of these late night games as well and chop it up. Maybe some long shot parlays or DFS plays or something like that. So definitely check that out. Link in the episode description if you're interested in joining our Discord. Sunday Night Football, Dolphins at the Eagles. Eagles favored by 2.5 now. The line's been kind of hovering between 2 and 2.5. The total is 51.5. It's been hovering between 51, 52. And that's, of course, 8:20 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Luck rankings. Sean, both of these teams have been pretty lucky. But in terms of the total, both of these teams have been going over, like scoring a little more than you would expect. I mean, obviously the Dolphins, but the luck rankings are pointing toward some regression in that aspect. Correct?
Yeah, it seems like it. Obviously, I still think this is going to be a really high scoring game. The Dolphins have scored on 81% of the red zone trips, but they're one of the best offenses we've ever seen. So I don't know how much regression exactly they're due for, but they're due for some. But I thought the total was pretty close to where I had it. 51.5, 52 sounds about right. So I'm a bit scared to bet this under. What about you?
I'd lean under. Definitely, not over. I think that, just some of the injuries with the Philadelphia Eagles offense. And then, the Dolphins really haven't played anybody. Except New England's defense held them to 24, and Buffalo held them to 20. So it's still so early in the year that it could, Miami might have just played four of the worst defenses in the league. I mean, True. Definitely Denver. Carolina is not great. The Giants were especially at that point one of the worst. And who else did they run up the score on? Chargers were, pretty bad in week 1. J.C. Jackson was still there. So, it's still early. I would lean under. We'll obviously talk about it. I think there's a lot to talk about. Pretty fascinating matchup. But let's start with the captain spot. Who do you like to have a freak performance?
I'm going with Jalen Hurts here. He's thrown for 280-plus yards in 3 straight games, mainly because they've been in close or trailing game scripts, which is kind of a rare thing for them. A lot of the time last year, they were done by the fourth quarter. They could just run out the clock or, just rest Hurts and the starters. But a matchup against the Dolphins just means it's going to be another close or potentially trailing game script where, I think this is the type of game where we could see Hurts, true ceiling. And obviously he's the goal line back, which means he's always a good bet for a rushing score, which is just really good leverage when it comes to the captain slot in these slates for the quarterback. So while he's probably going to be very chalky, I don't care. I'm going with Jalen Hurts here.
I mean, it's hard to say there's chalk because there's just so many guys on this one. I actually think, yes, Jalen Hurts, it's definitely a potential ceiling game for him because the Eagles aren't usually in potential shootouts because their defense is so good and they like to run the ball. But I do think this will be a good rushing game for him. And I think he's going to rely on his legs a little bit more because last week especially, I just thought he wasn't really sharp in his reads. And I think, this, instead of trying to force some balls down the field, like he missed a few wide open receivers. He just looked kind of confused out there. And now you're going up against Vic Fangio defense. Even the talent isn't great on Miami necessarily. They do have some pieces, but I do think Hurts is going to be a little quicker to pull it down and run. And you might get one of those like patented 100-yard rushing games from Hurts in this spot. And he's usually a good bet for at least one touchdown just because that. Right. So the Eagles are 93% with the brotherly shove, and the rest of the league is 78%. So they are just a cut above when using that play.
Well, Hurts can squat 6 plates?
Yeah, 600 plus or something like that. 600 pounds.
I think it's 6 plates each. I tried to think it. But yeah, you need that leg power for that play to work, apparently.
Yeah, with 6 plates on each side would be 270 on each side. That's 540 plus the bar. Yeah. It's right around 600 pounds. 585.
How many plates can you do?
If I can get 2 on each side, I'm doing good. All right. Like I said, a lot of choices here.
Yeah.
Got to go with Tyreek Hill. I mean, the upside is just massive each and every week. And since he joined the Miami Dolphins, it's just been otherworldly. He's had 140 or more receiving yards in 4 of his 6 games this year and 10 of 23 since joining the Dolphins. And this Eagle defense has kind of turned into a little bit of a pass funnel. They're number 2 in DVOA against the run, but 20th against the pass. They've been banged up in the secondary. Slay's still questionable. He's limited in practice. Reed Blankenship, their safety, didn't practice. Got hurt last game. You got a couple of corners, depth corners on IR and out, and Roby just got hurt. So it's been tough in the secondary. And also something kind of not really being talked about. I think you're getting a little bit of that brain drain, losing both your coordinators. The offense hasn't looked as sharp. Hurts hasn't looked as sharp, but also the defense hasn't quite looked as dominant, especially against the pass, which is always, you'd like to, if you could pick one of the two, you'd rather stop the pass than the run. So I think they're stopping the run just because they got just such talented guys in that front 7. But the pass defense hasn't been great. And look at the games that they've been giving up to opposing top wide receivers. Week 1, Kendrick Bourne, 11 targets, 6 catches, 64 yards, 2 touchdowns. Week 2, Justin Jefferson, 13 targets, 11 catches for 159. Addison also had 72 yards and a tutty, and Osborne got a tutty as well. So all 3 starters. Week 3, Mike Evans, 5 for 60 and a touchdown on 10 targets. Week 4, Terry McLaurin, 10 targets, 8 catches, 86 yards. Samuel also had 7 catches, and Dotson had a touchdown.
Wow.
Week 5, Cooper Kupp, 8 catches, 118 yards on 12 targets. Puka Nacua, 7 catches for 71 and a tutty on 11 targets. And notice a trend. All these top guys are getting double-digit targets. Like, that's where you're going. They still have Bradbury, and Slay should be back, but Slay hasn't been good this year. He's having his worst year, really, of his career. Outside of that, I think he made that one good play and brought a pick back, but outside of that, it hasn't been great. But week 6, Garrett Wilson, 12 targets, 8 catches, 90 yards. So every single week, the opposing wide receiver 1 has double-digit targets and at least 60 yards, and they're getting into the end zone or putting up massive yardage numbers. So it's been a struggle for Philadelphia, and now you're going up against the most productive wide receiver in the game. So love me some Tyreek in the captain spot. All right, who you got for values in this game?
Yeah, so Tyreek's a great call. I'm going to go with their second wide receiver in Jalen Waddle. He is really starting to heat up. He has a touchdown back-to-back games, but he only put up, 35 and 51 yards. But his underlying usage is trending up. This is the first time we've seen him run over an 85% routes run rate in back-to-back games. He didn't top 80% routes run rate until week 5. And he's seen a 30% or greater target rate the past couple of games, but the yardage hasn't been there. So like you mentioned, the Eagles secondary is banged up. This could be Waddle's first game where we see the high yardage total and a touchdown. So I think this is a great spot, for both Tyreek and Waddle. They're really, the passing offense right now. So, I think Waddle's rostership will still be pretty high, but I think he's a great play on this slate, and I'm going to try to have him in most of my lineups.
Yeah, and McDaniel does a great job with the concepts, and really they don't waste targets. Usually all of their route concepts are to try to get Hill or Waddle or one of the running backs with a lead blocker going. In the past game, they're not really targeting Durham Smythe a ton, or even the fullback Ingold hasn't really been getting much in the past game, so it's very concentrated. And this could be. I mean, I already rattled off all the numbers. Like I said, Addison, Osborne, Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson, Puka Nacua. There were wide receiver 2s and even 3s that were
if Jahan
balling
Dotson's
out.
having a good game against you, that's a problem.
I mean, I would stop a little short of saying good game. He caught 4 of 9 targets for 27 yards and a touchdown.
That's his best game of
it's
the
a good
season.
Fantasy game, or
decent
fantasy game.
Yeah.
But
I have to pile on Dotson at least for one more week. Just give me one more week.
Oh man, yeah, you're definitely gonna jinx him. He's gonna go for like 200 this week.
I'm trying to do that. You caught me.
We kind of talked about it already. Like Tyreek, we like Waddle, tough run defense. Also, you might have Jeff Wilson back. Who knows how that carry distribution is going to go with Mostert. So, I like the passing game over the run game. I still think Mostert obviously could get some, the scheme is just so good. He could do work in the passing game, or he could get, they'll figure out a way to get him in space. But I like Tua here because I do think this matchup favors the Dolphin passing game. As we talked about, 3 quarterbacks already have 330 or more total yards against this Eagles defense. Mac Jones had 331 and 3 touchdowns with only 1 pick in week 1. Kirk Cousins had 364 all through the air with 4 touchdowns and no picks. And Sam Howell had 330 yards and a touchdown with no picks as well. So the only quarterbacks not to have 330 or more total yards or multiple touchdowns against the Eagles this year are Baker Mayfield and Zach Wilson. So this is a matchup where Tua should eat. And on the other side, I do like DeAndre Swift in this game. I think the Eagles will be a little more run heavy, both with Hurts and Swift. I think this Miami defense, you could throw on them and you could run on them. But again, I just think the offense is a little out of sorts. I think Hurts is struggling with his reads. Devontae Smith is missing some practice time. So it's, that's never good when you're trying to get on the same page. I don't think him and Devontae Smith are really on the same page. And I think that's kind of an issue. And now Smith is hurt. Quez Watkins, your number 3, is hurt. So you sign Julio Jones to the practice squad. So the passing game is just a little, I think, touch and go right now. So I think you're going to see them recommit to the run after Swift had just 10 carries last week for 18 yards, but still a very productive fantasy day because he caught 8 passes, got in the end zone. Since week 2, remember he had that weird week 1 game where he barely played. Since week 2, Swift averaging 21.4 touches, just under 113 scrimmage yards per game, and has 3 touchdowns in his last 5 games. So he's a high-end running back 1 in terms of his production over the last month plus. And I think it's another great matchup. Dolphins 25th in DVOA against the run, 31st in DVOA on passes to running back. And Swift, just under a 62% rush success rate this year. That's 4th in the league out of 44 qualifiers. 1 spot behind Jalen Hurts at number 3. And Achane and Mostert are also top 6. So if Achane was playing, you would have 4 of the top 6 runners in success rate all in this game. But unfortunately, Achane is out. But speaking of injuries, even if Lane Johnson misses, only 28% of Swift's rushing yards and none of his touchdowns have come when running to Johnson's side, which is the right side. And that's because on the left side, you have Jordan Mailata, Landon Dickerson, and then Kelsey at center. All those guys are elite run blockers, all rank in the top 10 at their position in run blocking at PFF. So not really worried about Johnson. Another reason why I think passing wise, I think Hurts will do a little more with his legs in this one. Just because, if Johnson's banged up or out, the Eagles offense tends to struggle a bit. So I do think you got to play to your strengths here. So Swift, Tua, for me, let's go to dart throws. He like.
So I agree that this is DeAndre Swift's backfield, but I think Kenneth Gainwell's worth a dart throw here. Swift obviously deserves the much higher median projection, but this is the Eagles' backfield, and it can be unpredictable at times. And Gainwell's been mixing in quite a bit lately, especially on third downs and the 2-minute offense. So, if this does turn into a pass-heavy trailing game script, it could help him. There's a chance that the Eagles end up going with a high hand approach at points if Gainwell does, do well on his first few touches. So, I'm not going to have a ton of him, but the Eagles' backup running backs are always in play on these showdown slates just because, they can be kind of a crapshoot. So I'm going to go with Kenny Gainwell here.
Yeah, Gainwell's definitely been, he's been mixing in. He's been, it's been tough because Swift has been playing so well. So that's really been Gainwell's issue. But until last game, he was pretty much getting all of the RB2 work. Then last game, you saw a couple of Boston Scott. Yep. Yeah. So I guess he's another potential dart throw, but probably a week late on him. We'll see how that kind of shakes out. Penny seems to continue to be a healthy scratch. I like Braxton Berrios. So kind of mentioned it. This Dolphins offense is tough because very concentrated, as it should be, with Tyreek, Jalen Waddle, and the running backs, especially Mostert. But Philadelphia has been more man-heavy this season, which is interesting given what's going on in the secondary. But again, that's what happens when you switch coordinators. So they've been top 10 man coverage team in terms of rate of man coverage this year. But the last 3 weeks, they've ramped it up even more. Top 3 over the last 3 weeks. And Berrios is tied for second on the team in targets and catches against man coverage. Now, part of that is just Jalen Waddle being injured for a few games. But nevertheless, he looks like he's the third option at worst against man coverage because, as we've talked about a lot, running backs and tight ends tend to get those easy catches more so against zone. That's just kind of how it goes when you have man coverage. You're going to tend to look down the field at your wide receivers. And Berrios 2.3 yards per route against man coverage, which is very good. 1.5 against zone, so almost a full yard better per route against man this season. And he is running a route about just over 50% of Tua's dropbacks. He is the clear-cut number 3 wide receiver. So like me, some Braxton Berrios. Probably looks like he's like around the same price as all these other guys too. So like all the other Dolphins receivers. So like that. And then on the Eagles side, I already mentioned, like, you could definitely, I wouldn't be mad at some Boston Scott. But I do think there are some better options given the Devontae Smith is banged up and Quez Watkins is on IR. So Julio Jones, we talked about it. He's just been signed. Don't know if he's going to be elevated from the practice squad, but I think there's a chance because remember last season, for my money, the best GM in the game, Howie Roseman, what did he do after the Eagles' first loss? He went out and signed Linval Joseph and Ndamukong Suh to bolster that defensive line against the run. And those guys played just days later after being signed. And Joseph played 40% of the snaps. Suh played 26% of the snaps. So you definitely have an opening here at this number 3 receiver spot. I mean, I'm not sure. I don't think Smith is in any danger. But we're recording this Thursday, so not sure, not a guarantee. A lot of things can develop, between now and the game on Sunday night. So I mean, there's a chance they signed him because maybe Smith's injury is even worse than we thought. But definitely, if Jones is elevated, worth a dart throw. Will probably play immediately because the other wide receivers behind him would be Britton Covey, who's good returner for them, but they don't really seem interested in involving him in a pass game. And then Devin Allen's been getting elevated. Combined, those guys have 8 routes this year. They've run 8 routes combined. So it's going to be Jones if he's up. And if not, let's go with Olamide Zaccheaus again. Like I'm kind of tired of him. Like every time I watch the Eagles, like I see him out there just kind of getting mixed up and mixed in, and I feel like it's kind of adding to Hurts's confusion. You know, a new guy coming over from Atlanta, so you got 2 former Falcons. So maybe I don't know. Maybe Jones kind of helps with Zaccheaus, helps Hurts with Zaccheaus and kind of learning his reads and routes and things. But either way, I do think he's worth a dart throw because he's averaging an 80% route run rate in the 3 games Quez Watkins missed. And as I mentioned, Eagles seem to have no interest in playing Covey or Allen at wide receiver. Zaccheaus, an ADOT of average depth of target that is of 15.5 and averaging 18.5 yards per catch this year. He does have a touchdown, which did happen. I think it was the Bucs game, and definitely had him on this show as a dart throw. So hopefully we could strike lightning in a bottle twice. If again, this is, even if Julio does get elevated, I think Zaccheaus is probably still worth it because I don't think Julio will just go right into like an 80%. I think more likely Julio will still kind of be the wide receiver 4 and, you know, red zone packages, things like that. But Zaccheaus probably still ends up going as the number 3 wide receiver, at least for one more week with Julio still getting up to speed. So like me some Zaccheaus.
Yeah, and I mean, we can't move on to the next game until we at least mention Robbie Chosen's name as a potential dart throw. I mean, he'll either get 0 catches or, 80-yard touchdown. So he's worth a dart throw. Although Chase Claypool, at any given time now, might replace him. So, we're recording this a few days before the game. So see who's active. I don't know if I would use Claypool as a dart throw if he's active. But Chosen, he's just out there running deep routes. In a game like this, they might target him. So he's definitely worth a flyer in some of your lineups for a showdown slate.
Yeah, I mean, I would say any Dolphins receiver. Like I just rattled off all those numbers. Any Dolphins receiver that's active is in play. So that goes for Cedric Wilson. That goes for Robbie Chosen. I like Berrios. I already talked about him. But I do think you make a good point. One of Chosen, Wilson, or Claypool will probably be inactive.
Yep.
The other 2 who are active will probably be active to play receiver because I don't believe, they're not doing, maybe Wilson plays some special teams. I got to double check that, but I'm pretty sure Chosen does not. And I'm pretty sure Claypool does not either. At least probably don't want him to, he's just getting to the team, so he hasn't spent the offseason here. So let's see. Does Wilson play special teams?
He's the backup punt returner.
I mean, when does the backup punt returner get in the game?
I mean, he's probably more likely a special teamer than Robbie Chosen or Chase Claypool.
Yeah, I know. Robbie Chosen is not playing no special teams.
Right.
Right. And like for good reason. He just doesn't have, I don't think he has like the right mindset for that. But let's see. Cedric Wilson, special teams. He has played 2 special team snaps this year. 1 snap on the kick return team, 1 snap on the punt return team. So, yeah, no. So both of these guys, whoever's active at the 4 and 5 behind Waddle, Hill, and Berrios, out of Wilson, Chosen, and Claypool, they'll be active to play receiver. So, yeah, go. Don't hesitate to throw those guys in your lineup.